About a year ago, I reviewed the LoFree FLOW, a low-profile mechanical keyboard with ultra-smooth palm switches and a gasket mounting system that made the typing experience way better than I would have thought possible for a keyboard this thin. That said, it didn't support key remapping or macros, which sparked many debates about the merit of mechanical customization versus firmware configuration. And for many, key remapping is necessary. So, when LoFree reached out, promising a new keyboard that would use proprietary LoFree configurator software to enable firmware customizations, I was intrigued. Though it's worth mentioning that this software is still under development while I'm making this video, so I haven't had a chance to try it, but it looks like it should allow for key remapping, macros, and maybe even backlight color modification. But honestly, I was even more surprised to find that they went back to the drawing board way more than I anticipated with this keyboard redesign, yielding what I can only describe as a whole new class of ultra-low profile keyboard that looks like it was birthed directly from the McLaren Formula One wind tunnel. This is the aptly named LoFree Edge, and given its dramatic departure from the Flow aesthetic, I thought it best to create a direct comparison video. It's worth noting that LoFree sent me both of these keyboards, but the thoughts and opinions in this video are my own. So let's get into it. The overall construction of the Edge and the Flow are excellent. Both use premium materials, with the Flow opting for a predominantly aluminum alloy body, and the Edge split between a lighter magnesium alloy for the base, coupled with a real 3K carbon fiber top. And despite the fact that both are relatively light keyboards, the Flow weighing in at 585 grams and the Edge at 482 grams, neither feels hollow or inexpensive. Flipping them over, we can also see that the Flow's stationary raised feet, which give the keyboard a 4-degree incline, are replaced by kickstand style feet on the Edge, allowing you to transition between a compact 2-degree position or a similar 4-degree one. And of course, I have to note this hole punch motif with the LoFree branding cut into the underside of the Edge, which looks and feels pretty cool. Both keyboards support Windows and Mac OS with a function key toggle, as well as wired connections that pull at 1000 Hz, and 3 Bluetooth memory slots for wireless connections that pull at 125 Hz. Really though, the main differences begin with their form factors, with the Edge having a substantially thicker chin at the bottom of the keyboard to house the same 2000 mAh battery as the Flow, giving it a larger footprint but a slimmer side profile. To achieve this degree of thinness, some changes had to be made on the internal structure of the keyboard as well. So while the Flow has a pretty standard plate and gasket mounting system with plenty of internal foam, the Edge has a PCB gasket mounting system without a plate and really just case foam to support it. The switches themselves are also an interesting contrast. Both are exceptionally smooth palm constructs made by Kale. However, the switches on the Edge are impressively 2.1mm thinner than the already low-profile switches of the Flow, resulting in a noticeable 0.4mm of less travel when pressed. That said, one of the biggest trade-offs of the Edge is that the switches are soldered onto the PCB rather than being hot swappable like the Flow. So you're limited to a linear, albeit very nice, switch with the Edge. Though it's worth noting that the Kale switches on the Flow aren't universally compatible, because their design uses parallel pins rather than the perpendicular ones found on Gateron or Newfie's low-profile switches, limiting your options. That said, how does each keyboard sound? I have to mention that this isn't a perfect comparison, because my black Flow came with tactile switches, while the Edge uses linear ones. But hopefully you got an idea of what to expect if you stick with the default offerings. Overall, the extra foam and switch pads that are included in the Flow give it a noticeably quieter sound compared to the Edge, which has a bit of a harsher strike, likely because of the shorter travel distance coupled with the linear action. That said, I quite like the sound and feel of both keyboards, and though the shorter travel of the Edge does take a little bit of getting used to, it's pretty impressive that LoFree managed to maintain much of the smooth and marbly characteristics of the Flow typing experience that I love in an even thinner form factor with the Edge. But what do you think? Let me know using the comments below. The Edge and Flow both utilize dye sublimated PBT keycaps that are pleasantly resistant to finger oils, though both will likely experience some wear over time because they aren't double shot. That said, they employ the same universal low-profile MX stem mounts, so you could look for alternatives. Again, the Edge keycaps are a little shallower than those of the Flow, but this isn't overly noticeable when using them. I do feel the difference in concavity though, with the Edge's flatter design being less distinct to the touch than the more spherical keycaps of the Flow. Overall, though both have dual OS legends with predominantly matte characters along the function row, I prefer the Flow's keycaps because the white central legends offer a little more contrast than those of the Edge's. Though I will say, I appreciate that the Edge does include a few alternative colored and dot-dashed keycaps that spell out Edge in Morse code, allowing me to brighten things up just a little. The Flow also has better lighting, offering both a solid white backlight as well as two side lights that can be set to 8 different colors, and a solid or breathing effect. Alternatively, the Edge only has a backlight with a solid or breathing effect, and from the user's perspective, it's substantially dimmer than the Flow because the Edge switches diffuse the light coming from the north-facing LEDs, though we may eventually be able to change its color using the LoFree configurator software. Overall, I'm actually a really big fan of both the Edge and the Flow because I think LoFree is unmatched in developing really premium looking and exceptionally smooth feeling low-profile keyboards. That said, for many, the Flow's lack of key remapping is a non-starter. And so, while I don't yet have access to the company's proprietary software for the Edge, knowing that you will be able to reconfigure the firmware is a big selling point. At the time of making this video, the Edge is currently available for pre-order through LoFree's website and is about to launch a Kickstarter campaign where it will start retailing around $130 USD, about half of what the final MSRP is expected to be. This makes it a really interesting option right now compared to the Flow, which retails for $160. For me, the Edge is the more appealing and complete package, at least at this introductory price, because the company once again nailed the mechanical setup of this keyboard, and the LoFree configurator will be a nice cherry on top. But what do you think? Let me know using the comments below. Otherwise, if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.